Good afternoon. Happy Saturday, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here. We're here with Savage Saturday Comic Review 69, continuing and finally completing our adaptation of The Sword of Skelos, a novel by Andrew Offutt. This is the third and final part as adapted by Roy Thomas, and this is in issues 56, 57, and 58 of The Savage Sword of Conan. We've already done 56 and 57 in the previous weeks. This week we move on to 58 with an awesome cover by Earl Norem, one of the best in sword and sorcery fantasy art and fantasy art in general. So just absolutely fantastic. And as a fun little aside, on the official Marvel Fandom website, this cover is incorrectly credited to Nestor Redondo, who is a fantastic artist in his own right, but of course did not do this cover. Earl Norem did, and we're going to make sure proper credit is given. Alright, so when we left off in the second part, we had a lot of political intrigue going. Conan was starting to turn to be on the side of Balad and Akimon Khan and Hakiman from the nomads in the desert, from the Shankis, who wanted to overthrow the current Khan, who is Akhtar. All right, Ahkter, Akhtar Khan, and who was being an unjust ruler, cruel to the people and cruel to them around him, and had a sword ensorcelled by his mage, Zafra, that would slay upon command. And also his headmistress, Chia, who was playing both sides of the fence with the mage and him, and had her own designs on the crown, as did the mage. So we have a bunch of different people going after the crown to dispose the current Khan, and some for power, some to rule justly, and it's a battle to see who in the end will end up being it. And there is also another person who's the rightful ruler that they weren't talking about a lot, and who is the actual son. So we're going to see how this all pans out in this ultimate finale here. So as we open up, and as we left off in the last one, Conan was in negotiations and talks with Balad and started to see the faults in the ruling Khan. And although it doesn't seem like Balad was giving Conan all the information, at least the information he was giving him was somewhat accurate. And when Conan returned to the pub after getting some information to the tavern, Esperana had been kidnapped by the Thorns, which are the guards to Akhtar Khan. And that's all he needed to go fully on the side of Balad, because he was just betrayed after returning the Eye of Erlik to this ruling Khan, and learning that the Khan had lied to the Shanki and saying that the sister and the daughter of the of the Shankis out there, the rulers, the father and the son, had fallen ill and died of disease, when in fact she was slain by the ruling Khan. I know it's the Khan. It gets very confusing, right? So we start out with this great... Well, let's get to the frontispiece first. I do like showing the front art. And the frontispiece is by none other than, of course, John Buscema. So, great little piece of art there. And then our first few pages, we just have the mage Zafra. We have Esperana down here on the ground, and we have Conan here. Now, right now, Esperana is captured, and they don't know if she's still alive or dead. Conan thinks that she's alive. Just a 2-page spread recounting what happened in the first 2 issues of the adaptation. We'll show you that art up close because it's John Buscema art. Inks by Tony DeZanuga, so really good stuff. And as we open, Conan is sitting down with Balad, and they're plotting how they're going to get to the capital and how they're going to get inside the castle to rescue Esperana and overthrow this unjust ruler. And they are going to join Balad's forces with those of the Shanki out in the desert and create a diversion for Conan to get into the quarters and get to the ruling Khan Actor. You have Conan scaling the walls after sending out the emissaries to alert the Shanki of the plan, but Conan is quickly captured and netted, and in his youth and exuberance, underestimating his foes, and is captured for it. So things are not starting out well for Conan right away. And as he's fighting these guys, he takes a lot of them down with him until they overpower him by numbers, and ultimately he succumbs to them, especially with a blow to the head. And then Conan is coming to his senses here and there in the midst of being tortured in various ways. So you can see that he is just going through the paces. But Conan will not break, no matter how much they're torturing him. Conan is in and out of consciousness as he's whipped, as he's had a helmet put on his head that is hammered to dull his senses. And he awakens long enough to see the sword ensorcelled be given a command to slay someone, and it driving through the heart of its victim. So Conan knows there's a lot of evil afoot. And finally, he is set before the mage, Zafra, after many tortures and after many torture sessions. But Zafra is still underestimating the will of the barbarian here. He has no idea of the driving force behind Conan. And he sicks the sword on Conan, who then deflects it with a fire post that has a flame burning in it. And Conan plots really quickly to turn the sword against him. And we're seeing quite a battle here. After Zafra tried to kill Conan with the sword, Conan is dodging it as best he can. The sword is plunging at his heart, but Conan knows it's only a matter of time before he wearies and the sword strikes home. He can't fight an ensorcelled sword forever, and he needs a plan of action. And Conan has it. He deflects the sword. It gets embedded in the door, and it's stuck in there. But while it's freeing itself, Conan escapes through and shuts the door, leaving the blade, who must slay someone before the spell is complete, alone in the room with the wizard who ensorcelled it. And the blade finds its way home right here in Zafra's heart. And then Conan runs into one of the guards up top and is already on the run and in trouble yet again. But Conan overcomes that guard, steals his garb, and is on his way to free Esperana, who you'll see in the lower panel there is strung up. And Conan must go down and do battle and dispose of the people that are torturing her. So he quickly dispatches 3 of the guards, but there's a 4th one left. And this guy is a big, lumbering brute. And Conan almost gets killed by him. The helmet that he stole protects him from being brained and getting his skull cleaved. And Conan ultimately overcomes this guy and defeats him. So it's quite the battle. Esperana hanging in the balance, tethered by the rope, arms above her head. And Conan makes no mistake. When he can't chop through the guy's thick neck with one sword stroke, he plunges it in his belly and finishes the guy off, and then runs over to free Esperana. She's, of course, thankful, but still, Esperana has a lot of fire, so she's fighting Conan with it, She's giving him little barbs, but she's also thankful. It's like, stop talking to the dead, damn you, and cut me loose. Because Conan's just over the corpse, and he's like, I wanted to kill you slowly like you do to everybody else, but I'll just have to settle for you being dead. The guy can't hear. The guy's already passed. And Esperana's just tired of being hung up there. So he cuts her down. She can barely stand at the moment, but she proceeds to go get some clothes that are in a pile. And that's when one of the Thorns, the captain of the Thorns, the Khan's personal guard, enters in, but Esperanna's already disappeared into the shadows looking for some clothes. And Conan is caught at the bottom of the stone steps and knows that if the guard locks him in there, he's stuck there until reinforcements come and there's no escape. And the guard knows this. Now, Conan saw the sword in action and he releases it and says, "Slay him." But to Conan's surprise, the sword just falls. It only follows the command of the mage. And this guy's laughing, but what he doesn't see is a hand reach out of the shadows and grasp a dagger, which is quickly flung into him, and he falls down the steps after the dagger sinks into his thigh, and his neck breaks on the stairs, on the stone steps. And Esperanna and Conan make their escape. So we got a lot going on. Now, Conan, Esperanna's, she just wants to escape while they can. Conan wants to confront the Khan and use him as leverage to get out of the castle, thinking that they'll hold him at sword's edge and no one will rise up against them. So they burst into the Khan's chambers, where they are met with the Khan and 11 of his thorns, which is what he calls his armed guard. But the Khan is overconfident. He thinks the sword above him, still ensorcelled by Zafra, is there to save him. And he orders his personal guard out. And he is pretty much being very demeaning to Conan and Esperanna. And he is letting them know that he is absolute. Conan has Esperanna bar the door so the guard can't get back in. And the Khan is overconfident with everything that the mage told him. And the sword he has in sorcerer that's over him, he orders to slay Conan and Esperanna. But the sword does not obey. And that's when the Khan figures out that the mage was lying to him the whole time. The sword is ensorcelled, but it will only obey the commands of him. And he just realizes now that every time he gave the sword a command, that the mage had to be whispering the command himself to make it act, thus playing him for the fool and knowing that the mage planned to overthrow him and kill him when it was convenient. So all these political intrigues are coming to the forefront, and now this guy is left alone in a room, in a barred door, with nothing between him but him and Conan. And it's not good. But as that's happening, they hear the sounds of battle outside, and Balad and his forces have arrived, and they have dispatched the thorns outside the king's room, and they are calling for the Khan, I say the king, the Khan to open the door and let them in. Conan orders him to do so, saying, you are no longer ruler, it's Balad. And to Conan's disbelief, the current Khan that needs to be overthrown kind of takes it like a man and accepts his demise and his defeat, and goes and opens the door. So we see him unbar it, and in you see thrown is the body of Chia, who was also plotting against him, but also plotting for herself against the mage and the Khan, and ended up getting embroiled too much in her plottings and was killed by Balad and Akiman and Hakiman for her role in the death of the daughter and sister of the two Shanki. And Balad looses an arrow into the heart, into the body of Akhtar Khan, who gets up and he looses another arrow. And then Conan, of course, has issues with this. He accuses Balad of using a coward's weapon to kill an unarmed man. And Balad is starting to show his true colors now that he's instantly in power. And he tells Conan that he needs to be quiet and he no longer has a place for Conan. And you're starting to see the evil of Balad. And Conan sees that there was no good sides that he could have been on, except with that of the Shanki, who were being misled by both of these guys, Balad and Akhtar. And the desert dwellers, the Shanki, were the only noble people in this race. But as Blad's arguing with Conan and is going to have him imprisoned, the sorcerer, the mage, Zafra comes through, and he had spells to protect him. And so his sword passing through his heart wasn't enough to kill him with the spells that he had on him. And he commands the sword that's on the floor now to slay the acting Khan, which is Balad, and Balad is dead. And Conan grabs a sword before the mage can have him slain, and finally severs the mage's neck from his body, and he is now headless. Conan tells him, you need to burn this head. We don't know what else it's capable of. Get rid of it. Be done with it. Let's not take any more chances. And Conan suggests, now that 2 evil Khans have been disposed, that Junger Khan, the young rightful ruler, be put in place. And Isparana is going to stay behind and be the young Junger's woman. And in the finale, Conan just wishes to leave. Isparana asks him to stay. He says, no, I'm done with Zambula. If anybody asks me, I plan on flat out lying and say I never heard of the place. She goes, what if we cross paths again? He said, you'll be old and wrinkled and have many sons before I ever set foot back in Zambula. Conan is done with it. He wants nothing to do with it. And he is leaving to go spend a few days with the Shanki out in the desert because he respects them and he knows they're noble before he sets off on his own adventures again. But it was a wild, non-stop ride in this finale. Just so many betrayals happening. Conan and Isparana caught in the middle, just having to react over and over again just to survive. But a lot of fun. We got a cool little monster pin-up here I wanted to show you guys by Gene Day. Thought that was a fun little pin-up. Great art. And but that was it. That was the conclusion to our 3-part epic, The Sword of Skelos. A lot of intrigue in this one. A lot of people vying for the crown of Khan of Zambula. And the only person that wasn't, and the rightful heir, finally ended up in the seat. So it was a lot going on. Conan just reacting and being in prison, being beaten, being tortured, and still coming out on top in the end. And poor Isparana, who was captured, tortured, and abused by the jailers, now is the woman of the now ruling Khan. So things are starting to look up for her as well. And our story is finished. Now, I thought it was a fun conclusion. These adaptations are a lot of fun. I really enjoy them, especially by Roy Thomas. The only problem I find with them being split into 3 parts is the middle part always tends to be more set up. So the in-between always seems to, it's okay, but it's not great. And then you get to the beginning's great, the ending's great, and the middle is just exposition, right? There's nothing wrong with that. These are always best when you read them all 3 parts together because you're just reading a whole complete story. And when you do it that way, there's not really any weaknesses in it other than inconsistencies in writing or narrative. Now, next week, we are going to review Merlin. And there's another great Earl Norman cover for you right there. John Buscema art inside. Seeing a pattern with these big mags, the best talent on them. And that's going to be our Savage Saturday comic review next week, so look forward to that. That's it for this week, guys. Until next time, keep it casual.